In the following footage, you will just see me musing and reflecting on this matter of the shift in identity. I consider this shift in identity, this fresh understanding and experience of the nature of the self, to be a key point of transformation in the shift in consciousness of the Great Turning and in the work that reconnects. So you will see me here talking about what we learn from the despair work and the redemptive features of each dark emotion that we face. You will see me talking about it in terms of the hero's journey, so clearly articulated by Joseph Campbell, and reflect on the importance of descent in that journey, where the hero cannot be redeemed or fulfilled unless he meets the monster that bars the way. You will hear me refer to the great teacher Carl Gustav Jung and the exquisite and economical way he presented the shift that comes with the Great Turning, shift in our understanding of what the spiritual journey is, from one toward perfection to one toward wholeness. You will see this interlaced with reflections on the ecological self. This shift, beyond the hyper-individualism that brought us the industrial growth society, is, I believe, fundamental to our time. And it can build for us a sense of ballast and interconnectedness in the work that must be done. This is a poem I love by Jennifer Wellwood. Willing to experience aloneness, I discover connection everywhere. Turning to face my fear, I meet the warrior who lives within. Opening to my loss, I gain the embrace of the universe. Surrendering into emptiness, I find fullness without end. Each condition I flee from pursues me. Each condition I welcome transforms me and becomes itself transformed into its radiant, jewel-like essence. I bow to the one who has made it so, who has crafted this master game to play it as purest delight, to honor its form, true devotion. So this capacity, this truth, this experience of being able to face what you don't want to face, what often has a fearful countenance, scares you with the pain that it promises you. And if, instead of turning and running, you move right toward it, that is celebrated in core legends of our culture. Joseph Campbell and Heinrich Zimmer and others draw it out, the hero's journey. And feminists are working on the feminist version of the hero's journey, but always it involves facing something you don't want to face. And that's often pictured as a descent. And each of us has made that choice again and again. And each of us has seen herself, himself, or can see herself as the hero who, going down, faces the monster and embraces the monster instead of trying to eradicate, but take that, and then that turns into some kind of deliverance. And so there's sometimes this sense of just not being able to do anything other than be with that, like some fated appointment from the beginning of time that breaks your heart, and at the same time as it breaks your heart, it fulfills you totally. That you know that this is where you're meant to be. I felt that in Novosibirsk. I sensed that when Patricia talked about her friendship with Joe on death row and what she's learned through him, and everything she learns through him breaks her heart, but that isn't, she has to know it. There is a transformative, you can't pull back from that, because in that, in your readiness to take that in, is a promise for us all that is so big that we don't have words for it. Within the context of our subject for today, which is ourself, the self. This is the primary question in all the spiritual traditions. What do you do with this clamoring, cranky, demanding, incessantly chattering self? As in the root tradition of liberal Protestant Christianity that I'd grown up, the self is the crucified. It's sacrificed. But it's also improved and ennobled. And there are traditions where it's punished and the self is mortified and seen as worthless. And there are the traditions and teachings where the self is purified and seen as radiant at the heart of all things. And then how amazing it was for me to encounter in the Buddhist tradition that the self isn't to be treated in any of these ways: sacrificed, ennobled, improved, scolded, mortified. It's just, you see through it. It's just a convention. It's just a thought form. It's just a metaphoric construct. And we can define it however we want. And the definitions are essentially arbitrary. Carl Jung, and this is one of the things that I most love of that very verbose man, and he put it in astrological terms. He didn't say the industrial growth society and the great turning. He said Pisces and Aquarius. But as we move from Pisces to Aquarius, or into the new age, the spiritual journey shifts, is conceived differently, shifts from being a journey toward perfection to being a journey toward wholeness. See, the journey to perfection, which has been very strong in every tradition, especially during the patriarchal era, which has been quite long, it's vertical. You arise. The journey is one of ascent. You go up. And you climb away up from this messy, broken world toward increasing light and mind. Mind is up here. Nature is down here. Light is up here. Darkness is down here. Moral purity is up here. Depravity is down here. Bliss is up here. pain and brokenness is down here. Reason is up here. Feeling and instinct is down here. And where do you think male and female go? Spirit goes up here, flesh goes down here. But see, Jung, God bless him, he saw there, and it was said, this, watching the two world wars, that these polarities were actually crucifying the Western mind. It was pulling it into these polarities our journey is now in this time, I believe, and I sense it and sniff it all around, and is just the opposite. And the whole stance of it, the whole posture of it is different. I want you almost to feel the magnitude, the importance, the hugeness of what this is, to drop the project of making a perfect self and all the self-righteousness that comes along with that baggage. To honor that for all, I have a poem that is very precious to me, of this whole different stance of the journey to wholeness, of embracing, that is written by an Australian businessman, Bill Johnston, whom I met in Melbourne in 1990 when I went there with Matt Fox, and he had actually made a song of this, and his life had been changed by an incident that he had allowed to happen between him and some Aboriginal people. So this is like a song to what we are invited to in this wholeness. I take to myself my broken self, my guilt, my peace, my folly and joy, my sickness, my health, in laughter and agony, hating and loving, my fear and my birthing, and I am made whole. I take to myself you, my neighbor, cupping your life within my hands, your broken self, pure gift to me, not burden, gift, as mine to you, and I am made whole. I take to myself you, broken earth, stripped and abused, paved over and poisoned, you mother so freely, abundant in grace, clasp in your mercy, surprise into tears, and I am made whole. I take to myself your broken self, my dear, near God, broken, for lost and for spent. As fragmented love and nectar of life, you come, gentle God, and I am made whole. You come, gentle, broken God, and I am made whole. So I would like to look to ways of reconfiguring the self. That's already, a big one. That it's in being with the brokenness that we become whole. That's the project, not perfect, not infallible, not pure. Project of personal purity in a poisoned and polluted land. How do we even do that? But there in the traditions, there's just the opposite, that there's Shiva, who has the poison. Remember what Shiva did? He drank the poisonous ways. It's an act of unity with his world, knowing that it could only get clean and get transformed if he didn't hold back from it. So one is deep ecological, and the other is systems. And both of these are just wonderful gifts of that third dimension of the Great Turning. Deep ecology, which is a form of thinking and valuing and seeing reality in larger terms than our anthropocentric goals, seeing environmental projects as more than cleaning up this river or that swamp in order to serve the comfort and profit of humans, but inviting us to enlarge our sense of our self-interest beyond the usual confines of our self. This is an amazing thing that's happening right at this time. Where you draw the line of the limits of the self is arbitrary, and it's because it's a metaphor, it's a hypothesis. And you can't draw it. It's easy. I'll draw it right here. Keep your hands off me. Or I can draw it to include my family. Or I can draw it to include my house and my garden. Or I can draw it to include my clan and my city and so forth. So it's not that one is more true than the other. And I think that for all of us, we dance between them. There are moments when we extend it and moments when we pull it back. And there's not a good or bad to that. But that facility, that flexibility is marvelous. And from the beginning of doing this work, starting about 30 years ago, one of the things that I had not expected was how people, by being able to tell the truth about what they felt was happening in the world, when they were able to befriend their pain for the world and see it as a capacity to suffer with the world, and got the meaning of that suffering within. If I suffer with the world, I am an intimate part of this world. I'm not out there. I'm not a... and that this... what this produced that I had not expected was a capacity to shift identity. So we'll be practicing that later today. But the thing is, you know it and you do it all the time. But it's very good to see it because we don't get strokes for this from the larger society, because the larger society doesn't think or entertain itself in these terms. It's truly a most amazing, revolutionary, and noble activity. And it's invisible to the categories of the industrial growth society and conventional mainstream society, which is based on, number one, getting ahead. And it's based on a competitive view of the world.
Joanna, can you say anything about increasing the flexibility with which we perceive ourselves versus maintaining clear boundaries?
Both in ecology and systems thinking, which are very interwoven, the borders are less places, walls for protection, than areas for interaction that must be permeable. And just what they're learning in cell biology, that a membrane of the cell is a place of intelligence arising, that and interaction, so that the psychologically, especially the mental sense of trying to keep ourselves safe and unchanged by putting up a wall, actually deadens us inside. So there's isolation, and with that isolation comes a deadness, and then a prey to fantasies of persecution. So I was just thrilled when Arnie Ness, I read with Fran back in 1984, it was, his articles about deep ecology and how the project of self-realization, that was my favorite article of his, and it's in the book I did with John Seed called Thinking Like a Mountain. He said the self-realization, which is sort of in Hindu terms what the spiritual path is actually realizing your identity with all life progressively. As you mature, as you ripen, you spiritually, the confines of the self go in widening circles. One of the things I like best about the teachings of the ecological self is that it makes moralizing, moral exhortation, irrelevant. Sermonizing is boring and ineffective. This is pointed out by Arnie Ness. Ness calls this self-realization a progression where the self, quote, to be realized, so as you're realizing, oh, that's me and that's me, extends further and further beyond the separate ego and includes more and more of the phenomenal world. And he says, in this process, notions such as altruism and moral duty are left behind. It is tacitly based on the Latin term ego, which has as its opposite alter, the other. Altruism implies that the ego sacrifices its interest in favor of the other, the alter. The motivation is primarily that of duty. It is said we ought to love others as strongly as we love ourselves. There's a sentence of his that I just love. There are, however, very limited numbers among humanity capable of loving from mere duty or from moral exhortation. Isn't that wonderful? Then he goes, unfortunately, the extensive moralizing within the ecological movement has given the public the false impression that they are being asked to make a sacrifice, to show more responsibility, more concern, a nicer moral standard. But all of that would flow naturally and easily if the self were widened and deepened, so that the protection of nature was felt and perceived as protection of our very selves. I just got to read you a rap by our friend Drew Dellinger. He lives in Oakland. So this is how you can sing when you discover your ecological self and how far it goes. I mean, there's no limit. I want to tell you about love. There are approximately 1 trillion galaxies. I want to tell you about, in the Milky Way, there are about 100 billion stars. I want to tell you, love is the breath of the cosmos. I want to write a love letter to the Milky Way. Everything is an expression of the galaxy. I mean, talk about shift in identity. Everything is an expression of the galaxy. You too. My 30 trillion cells, the 4 noble truths, the 8-fold path, the 5 precepts, the 7 energy centers of the body, everything is the Milky Way, including my lover and every kiss of every lover that's ever lived, the deep sky, the ubiquity of spirit, the DNA of dreams, the interlocking patterns of cosmic constellations. Cosmos and justice are synonymous with beauty. But parts of the Milky Way don't give off light. Sometimes it feels like I've got ground zero in my heart. The dark sun bleeds shadows. The dark sun leaves shadows on everything. The forecast calls for scattered to broken skies. If there wasn't so much love, there wouldn't be so much pain. It's like love is the nervous system of the universe, bringing us joy and sorrow. I inherit the voice of the Milky Way in my dreams. The entire galaxy revolves around a single drop of wine. Your skin, texture of the cosmos, the religion beyond religion. I want to know you like the wind knows the canyons or the rain knows the rivulets. Lightning is striking in 100 places every moment. The universe spills through our dreams. The future belongs to the most compelling story. Even the word love is not adequate to define the force that wove the fabric of space-time. If we could sense everything at once, like Krishna entering history with all the memories of his past incarnations, then I could tell you about love.
Oh, man.